you.
We're going to turn to Northern Ireland now because the UK government has outlined a planned law to change parts of the Brexit deal on Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Protocol. That was agreed with the EU more than 2 years ago, and we'll look at some more about the reaction from there in just a little while. But first of all, let's get the British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss's announcement.
I am announcing our intention to introduce legislation in the coming weeks to make changes in the protocol. Our preference remains a negotiated solution with the EU. And in parallel with the legislation being introduced, we remain open to further talks if we can achieve the same outcome through negotiated settlement.
Well, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has defended that plan.
Let's fix it. We don't want to nix it, we want to fix it, and we want to work with our EU partners to do it.
So let's take a look at the arrangement for Northern Ireland in that Brexit deal. Chris Mason explains.
So what is the protocol? It's an arrangement to deal with the fact that Northern Ireland is in the UK and the Republic of Ireland is in the European Union. Some things passing from England, Scotland and Wales into Northern Ireland are now getting checked when they cross the Irish Sea, placing what is in effect a border within the UK. Because as part of the peace process, there's an open border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, meaning the checks can't happen there.
Well, the creation of what's effectively a new sea border in the Irish Sea is very unpopular amongst Northern Ireland's unionist parties, who work to defend Northern Ireland's place in the UK. The Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, were the biggest party in Northern Ireland when the protocol was agreed. And this is how they reacted back then.
Our place in the United Kingdom is being undermined. That is not acceptable.
Well, since then, the DUP's position on the protocol has not changed. What has changed is who is in government. There have been assembly elections in Northern Ireland. Since the Good Friday Agreement, it's had a power-sharing system. And this time, Sinn Féin became the first nationalist party ever to win the most seats. But the DUP, who came second, are refusing to enter a power-sharing government until they say concerns about the protocol are resolved. And Liz Truss says that that's why the government wants to change the protocol. That and issues with goods arriving in Northern Ireland.
EU customs procedures for moving goods within the UK have already meant companies are facing significant costs and paperwork. Some businesses have stopped trade altogether. Without resolving these and other issues, we will not be able to re-establish the executive and preserve the hard-won progress sustained by the Belfast Good Friday Agreement.
Well, on that, this policy expert says that Liz Truss justifies domestic legislation almost entirely on the basis that the protocol undermines the Good Friday Agreement. However, she doesn't address the fundamental question of why this wasn't a concern for the government that signed the treaty in 2019 and knew about the risks. And that's true because Boris Johnson did sign that treaty. Just have a look at this exchange between the Prime Minister and our political editor, Chris Mason.
Help me out then here. You signed this deal, presumably you knew what was in it. What's changed since?
I think it's very important to recognise that the protocol is a classic piece of Brussels negotiation.
Which you signed up to?
Yes, and I signed up to in good faith, imagining that it would not be interpreted in too pharisaical or draconian
Are they
a way.
acting in bad faith now?
I think what they're doing is being overzealous in the way that it's being applied.
And what about reaction in Northern Ireland? Well, as expected, the DUP has welcomed the move.
The statement today is a welcome, if overdue, step. That is a significant move towards addressing the problems created by the protocol and getting power sharing based upon a cross-community consensus up and running again.
The nationalist Sinn Féin party, however, disagrees. Sinn Féin accepts the protocol. Here's BBC Newsnight's Nicholas Watt speaking to Sinn Féin, and in his question, Nicholas is referring to Boris Johnson.
So he's saying, I'm not
wrecking the protocol, but I have to reform it to win the confidence of the unionist communities to get power sharing up and running.
Well, let me answer you as we answered the Prime Minister in the following terms. Firstly, nobody, including unionism, has a veto on progress. The majority of MLAs returned to the Assembly support the protocol. That's a fact. There is no call for a consensus or for a cross-community consensus for the protocol. That's a legal fiction. The British government is peddling this myth to try and dress up what we regard as a very, very negative approach to the Good Friday Agreement and its institutions, and to try and dress it up as being pro-Good Friday Agreement.
So let's cross over to Westminster and speak to our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake, who joins us now. So, Jonathan, just talk us through what is this new deal and what's been the response in Parliament?
Well, there's no new deal, but what the government is proposing to do is put forward legislation which would become law in the UK that would allow it to get round some of the trickier bits of the Northern Ireland Protocol that are causing problems. But the response has varied. Some say this is a blatant breach, or would be a blatant breach of international law, and completely goes against everything that the UK signed up to when it agreed the post-Brexit deal with Brussels and the EU. Labour are saying that the government should stick to that agreement and try to find a negotiated solution. As you mentioned, the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, who are crucial to all of this, refusing to enter power-sharing government in Northern Ireland until problems with this protocol are sorted, did welcome what the Foreign Secretary had to say in Parliament today. But I would say that there is one big difference between saying that you're going to introduce legislation and then actually following through with that, bringing it forward and it being passed into law. That could take months or longer. There will undoubtedly be opposition, if not in the House of Commons, in the House of Lords, and it could be some time yet before it's a realistic prospect of anything coming into place. And I think it's also important to remember that the government still says it would prefer to negotiate a solution with the EU to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but that this is a reserve or an insurance policy, as the Prime Minister described it yesterday, to make sure that it has another option.
OK, well, Jonathan, don't go away, because I want to look at the legality of all of this. Questions are arising. Now, the Northern Ireland Protocol is part of the Brexit withdrawal agreement with the EU. That's now part of international law. The UK government has this position.
We're clear that this bill is legal in international law, and we will set out the legal position in due course.
Which brings us to the EU's response. The European Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič said that the EU has significant concerns. He goes on to say that the EU-UK relationship must be based on the full respect of the legally binding commitments that the two sides have made to one another, and that the EU will respond with all measures at its disposal. So let's hear now from Ireland's Foreign Minister.
Well, I mean, a breach of an international treaty that is international law is a breach of international law. So let's be clear about that. And what is being proposed here is deeply unhelpful, I think, to the partnership approach that's necessary to resolve the outstanding issues on how the protocol is implemented in Northern Ireland. The unionist community in particular have real concerns here that need a response. The European Commission have been very clear that they want to respond to those concerns. They published papers towards the end of last year as a basis for how they could do that. And they have been looking to develop those ideas with the British government for months now. But let's be clear, there has been no serious engagement since February.
So let's return to Jonathan. And Jonathan, what can the EU do? Are we talking about legal action, a possible targeted trade tariff?
Both of those, possibly. The EU and the UK have a free trade agreement since the UK left the European Union. That was agreed by both sides, and that means that there's no tariffs or charges, no quotas or limits on goods passing between the UK and the rest of the EU. The EU could decide to maybe impose tariffs to make it more expensive or more difficult for goods to pass between the UK and the EU. It could start maybe limiting the number of fishing boats that are allowed access to EU waters, more so than they are already. All of those are options available to it, but not necessarily quick and easy ones, because it would be required to give notice, and again it could take months or more for any of that to come to pass. But certainly the EU, in its response to the UK's move today, is saying that it would be able to and need to call on all of the options it has at its disposal. And when people talk about a trade war, that's essentially what they mean: the ratcheting up of charges and logistical difficulty and creating friction when these two sides are trading with each other relatively freely without any barriers, as they are at the moment.
Jonathan, as always, thank you very much for talking us through that. Jonathan Blake there joining us live from Westminster. Much more details and explanation on our website. And don't forget, also, Ros Atkins has an explainer as to more details on the Northern Ireland Protocol. I'll be back in just a few minutes' time. Do stay with us here.